It was a quiet night, the sky deep and clear, and a thin veil of silver mist lay across the surface of the lake. In the small village of Moon Spring, where only a handful of wooden houses stood together and smoke from chimneys drifted lazily into the air, most people had gone to bed earlier than usual. In a small wooden home, a young woman named Lila sat by the window. The wood stove crackled softly, the warmth wrapping the room in a comforting embrace. Outside, the reflection of the moon stretched like a silver ribbon across the water, breaking into 1,000 fragments of light with every small ripple. Lila had always had memories tied to this lake. Her mother used to tell her, "Whenever your heart feels heavy, look at the water. Water keeps secrets better than anyone." But alongside those words, there was a story everyone in the village had heard as a child. They said that many years ago, a city had existed right beneath this lake. A city with stone towers and arched bridges that, one stormy night filled with lightning, sank into the water. No one knew why or how, but from that night on, if you looked into the water at midnight, you might see the shadow of its buildings beneath the waves. That night, Lila felt her heart beating faster for no reason. She opened the window a little, breathing in the damp scent of mist and wet wood. The air was cool, but the soft breeze coming from the lake carried an unusual calm. When the old clock struck midnight with its gentle chimes, she heard something. Not loud, not clear, just a whisper coming from far away. It was as if someone beyond the mist was calling to her. She slowly took her shawl, grabbed a small lantern from the table, and stepped outside. A narrow wooden path led down to the pier. With each step, the sound of water dripping from the pier's roof and the smell of damp timber grew stronger. When she reached the pier, she saw a small boat tied there. One she hadn't seen in the morning. The wood of the boat looked a little worn, but its rope was new. On the seat of the boat sat a glass lantern, glowing softly with a golden light, warm and gentle, like the last sunlight filtering through autumn leaves. Lila felt herself moving closer without thinking. She placed her hand on the edge of the boat, and it gave a small sway, as if to say, "Come aboard." There was no sound of waves, no wind, everything was still, yet alive. She stepped inside and sat down. Before she could untie the rope, the boat began to drift on its own. The water parted quietly beneath it, and the moonlight formed a narrow path leading forward. The further she went, the more the mist opened around her, and the water grew clearer. Soon, she began to see shapes beneath the surface, like the shadows of ancient buildings. Round windows, tall columns, even stone statues partly covered in moss and lakeweed. She took the golden lantern in her hands and shone it into the water. The light sank deep, and the structures below became clearer and clearer. Then she saw it, a stone staircase leading down from the lakebed, disappearing into some hidden, forgotten place. Her heartbeat slowed. Not from indifference, but from a strange familiarity whispering, "You've been here before." The water shivered slightly, and then, a voice soft and deep, spoke in her mind without moving any lips. "Welcome home." The lantern's glow shifted from gold to a gentle blue. The mist returned, but this time it felt warm and safe, like a blanket. The boat turned silently and carried her back the way it had come. When she stepped onto the pier again, the lantern was still in her hands. There was no flame inside, only a calm, steady blue light, pulsing like a quiet heartbeat. From that night on, whenever she needed peace, Lila would light the lantern and hear the same whisper in her heart. "This is your home." In the quiet riverside town of Solène, where the streets smelled faintly of rain-soaked cobblestones and the air seemed to hum with memories, there lived an old clockmaker named Emilien Duval. His workshop stood at the very end of Rue des Étoiles, a narrow lane lined with ivy-covered houses whose windows glowed like amber lanterns at dusk. Inside his shop, clocks of every kind ticked in soft, overlapping rhythms, a delicate orchestra of time. Grandfather clocks with brass pendulums swung in patient arcs, pocket watches glimmered in glass cases, and wall clocks chimed like distant church bells. Emilien treated each piece as if it were alive. He believed time itself whispered through the gears, and only those who listened carefully could hear it. One rainy evening, as mist rolled in from the river, the doorbell of his shop jingled. A young woman stepped inside, tall, with a long coat the color of midnight and eyes like green glass. She introduced herself simply as Isla Vera and placed a small, peculiar watch on the counter. Its face was cracked, its hand stuck at exactly 11:57, and its casing was etched with strange, swirling symbols. "This watch," she said softly, "has been in my family for generations. But it's different. It doesn't just measure time, it remembers it." Emilien, curious, turned the watch in his hands. The brass felt unusually warm, almost as if it had a heartbeat. When he pressed the crown, a faint sound escaped, not the click of metal, but the murmur of voices, laughter, even the crash of ocean waves. Over the next week, Emilien worked on the watch late into the night, oiling gears and polishing its casing under the glow of a single desk lamp. But as he did, he began to hear more than sounds. He saw fragments of scenes reflected in the glass, a child chasing a kite along a cliff, a candlelit dinner in a city square, a ship vanishing into fog. One night, the watch began ticking again, and with each tick, the visions grew stronger. Emilien realized this wasn't just a watch. It was a door to moments that had already passed, each one preserved inside it like pressed flowers in a book. When Isla returned, Emilien asked the question that had been haunting him. If this watch holds so much of the past, what happens when it reaches midnight? Isla's gaze dropped to the floor. "Midnight," she said, "is when it chooses a moment and lets you go back." The rain outside grew heavier, drumming on the shop's windows. Emilien, torn between duty and desire, knew he had a choice. He could return the watch and forget what he'd seen, or wind it to midnight and step into a moment he thought he'd lost forever. The clock hands crept forward. 11:58. The ticking grew louder, almost urgent. Emilien looked around his shop, at the quiet forest of clocks, at the life he had built in Solène, and then at the strange, shimmering watch in his palm. The decision, when it came, felt like a heartbeat. But whether Emilien stayed or turned the key to his own past is something only the watch remembers. It was a cool, quiet night. A thin veil of mist spread gently over the cobblestone streets of the village, and the old lamps cast their soft, yellow light like tiny lanterns floating in the fog. At the end of one of these streets stood an old house with weathered wooden windows. Inside, a young woman named Leah sat by the fireplace, a cup of cinnamon tea in her hands, a soft blanket draped over her shoulders. The crackling fire and the sweet scent of cinnamon warmed the room. But tonight, Leah's mind was restless. For some time, a recurring dream haunted her, a glass clock standing on golden sands along a misty shore. From that clock came a gentle sound, not ticking, but a whisper like a soft murmur. Every time she tried to move closer and touch it, the mist thickened and everything blurred away. Determined, Leah decided to write down the dream carefully in her old leather journal before sleep. The journal's cover bore the image of a golden bird, an heirloom from her grandmother, who had always said, "Every dream that repeats thrice is an invitation to a place unknown." She wrote for pages. The candle beside her slowly burned down, and sleep finally embraced her. When she opened her eyes, she was exactly on that shore. The waves lapped softly with steady rhythm, and the sand beneath her feet was cool and smooth. The sky was calm and gray, and a silver mist drifted toward her. Through the haze, she saw the great glass clock. Its quartz-like pillars sparkled, and the sands inside flowed gently downward, but with each grain, a note sounded, a clear, crystalline chime like a spoon lightly tapping glass. Leah stepped closer cautiously. With every step, the sands glowed faintly, lighting her path. When she reached the clock and placed her hand on its glass, time around her stopped. The waves hung frozen in the air, the mist ceased its motion, and even the strands of her hair, usually moved by the breeze, lay still. A voice came from within the clock, neither distinctly male nor female, but somewhere between. "You have come late, but there is still time. If you seek the answers to your questions, you must follow the path of the sands." The base of the clock parted gently, and the sands flowed like a small river into the heart of the mist. Leah found herself drawn after them without resistance. The sands led her to a meadow filled with blue flowers, fragrant with a mix of mint and sea air. In the center sat a man with a wide-brimmed hat and a gray cloak, resting on a wooden chair. A thick book lay open in his hands, and when he looked up, his eyes shone golden, the same color as the sands of the clock. He spoke softly. "Anyone who sees the glass clock becomes a traveler of time, but your path to past or future depends on what your heart desires." Leah sat quietly, listening to the whispering wind. 1,000 questions filled her mind. Why did she dream this? Why did she feel she had forgotten a part of her life? The man closed his book and continued. "If you go to the past, you will see something you were never meant to forget. If you go to the future, you will glimpse something you might not want to know." Her heart beat faster, but she answered firmly, "I want to see the past." In a blink, she found herself in a room scented with fresh bread and dried flowers. It was her grandmother's house, but younger, brighter. She heard the joyful laughter of a child and, turning, saw herself, a small girl in a blue dress sitting on the floor, eagerly filling her leather journal. Her grandmother was beside her, with kind eyes and a gentle voice. "Remember, every word you write here will one day guide your way." Leah felt tears well up. She reached out to touch them. But the scene slowly faded. She was back on the misty shore, the glass clock now showing its sands nearing their end. The voice came again. Now that you have remembered your past, you may build your future. It is time to wake. Leah awoke to the soft crackling of the fire. Her teacup was still half full, and her leather journal lay open on the table. With a gentle smile, she picked up her pen and began writing her dream in full. Outside, the mist still lingered over the streets, but inside her heart, she knew that mist would no longer lose its way. The night had fallen quietly over the forest. A thick mist wrapped everything in its soft, cold embrace, and every branch and leaf seemed to be immersed in profound silence beneath this gentle veil. Arya, a young man with bright eyes and soft brown hair, stepped into the forest. For years, he had been searching for an ancient tale, a story his grandfather told him as a child about a hidden city deep within the woods. A city no one had ever seen except those whose hearts were pure and brave enough. In his hand, Arya held a small lantern, its light barely piercing through the dense fog. The path was covered in dry leaves, and the sound of his gentle footsteps mingled with the whispering wind. With each step, his heart beat faster, not from fear, but from a feeling that this path was his destiny. Suddenly, he heard a distant, soft murmur, like the whispers of forest spirits. Arya stopped and listened. The gentle, unintelligible voices seemed to be guiding him. He followed the sound and came to a place where the trees were taller and more majestic than anywhere else. Tiny lights flickered among the branches, as if the forest itself had lit them. In the midst of this glow stood a narrow wooden bridge over a small pond. The water was clear and still, shimmering under the moonlight. Arya took a deep breath and stepped onto the bridge. On the other side stood a large stone door, covered with ancient, mysterious carvings that told stories 1,000 years old. He placed his hand on the door, and it slowly opened, as if it had been waiting for him. Inside was a long, narrow corridor lit by wall-mounted lanterns. The walls were adorned with paintings of long-forgotten times, scenes from the lives of people who once called this forest home. Arya stepped inside quietly, each footstep echoing softly in the silent space. But the sound was not of the present, it was a resonance of memories past. After several minutes, he reached a room filled with a small library of ancient manuscripts. On a wooden table lay a large leather-bound book with an elegantly inscribed title. Secrets of the Misty Forest. Arya opened the book, and the pages turned gently, as if stirred by an unseen breeze. He read, "Within the heart of this forest lies a city hidden in mist, a city visible only to pure hearts. The people who live there are guardians of the secrets of nature and time. If you seek truth, you must uncover the forest's secret. At that moment, the whispers in the room grew louder, and the lantern light shifted to a soothing blue. In a corner, a hidden door appeared, revealing a new path. Filled with both excitement and a touch of fear, Arya entered the newly revealed corridor and found himself in a new world filled with glowing lights and soft, indistinct sounds. In this new realm, he met kind and wise beings, creatures who protected a great secret, stretching from the roots of ancient trees to the distant stars. Arya realized that every step brought him closer to understanding time, life, and himself. Along the way, he learned that truth is not only found in appearances, but in the depths of mysteries and silence. Arya entered the blue-lit corridor, where walls were decorated with intertwined branches and dancing stars. The lanterns flickered gently, reacting to every step he took. At the end stood a large golden door adorned with intricate carvings. When Arya touched it, a warm, soft voice echoed. To enter, you must answer one question. Unafraid and full of curiosity, Arya listened. The question resounded in the air. What is more precious than anything else, yet cannot be seen, touched, or bought? Arya thought carefully. After a moment of silence, he answered calmly, Time. At once, the door opened, revealing a room filled with colorful lights. Each light had a sound, some like children's laughter, some like the soft whisper of the wind, and others like the soothing patter of rain. Among these lights danced small luminous beings like forest fairies with kind faces and eyes full of wisdom. They smiled and welcomed Arya. One of them, glowing with a blue light like moonlight, said, Arya, you have entered the heart of the forest, a place where time and memories intertwine. We are the guardians here, preparing you for a journey that will deepen the roots of your being. Arya's journey began. They led him to hidden gardens where flowers blossomed, each one representing a memory. When he touched a flower, a childhood scene or a lost love would unfold in his mind. With every step, he became more acquainted with his true self, his hidden fears, his secret desires, and the power that surged within him. One day, by a clear spring, Arya met an old man with white hair and kind eyes. The man called himself the Timekeeper and said, You have come not only to understand your past, but to shape your future. This forest is the temple of memories and time. Those who learn its secrets hold their destiny in their hands. Arya felt a great responsibility settle on his shoulders, but also an endless hope blossomed in his heart. He decided to return, not just to see the past, but to revive the moments that gave meaning to his life. Back in the village streets, the soft mist still lingered on the ground, but now Arya had not only open eyes, but an aware heart and a clear mind. He picked up his leather journal and began to write. Every word, every sentence, built a bridge to a deeper understanding of time and life, a bridge he wished to share with others. And so, the secret of the misty forest became not only a story to be told, but a journey to be lived.